Remember those Nigerian print emails? You know the ones I mean, right? With the Comic Sans font, like a surefire sign, it was a scam.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Those were classic.
But things have changed, haven't they? These scams are getting so much more sophisticated, like hyper-personalized. Honestly, it's a bit creepy.
It really is. And a big part of what's driving this whole new level of deception, it's AI.
And that's what we're diving deep into today. AI-powered scams and all the security threats that come with them. You found some incredible sources for this, by the way. News articles, expert analyses, reports, and all recent stuff from just the last year.
Yeah, the goal was to get a really current snapshot, of how AI is being used, weaponized, really, from like impersonating people so convincingly to opening up new vulnerabilities for organizations, even ones that are pretty tech-savvy.
Right, and as always, we want to break this all down for our listeners, extract the key information about how AI is transforming the scam landscape, and, most importantly, what you need to know to protect yourself without getting lost in the technical weeds. So let's start with where do we even begin? It seems like these AI-powered scams are becoming so much more common, especially those targeting individuals.
You're right, they really are. And a good place to start, I think, is with the scam that's been around for a while, but has been given a scary new twist thanks to AI. The grandparent scam.
Oh, yeah.
You've probably heard of it, right? Someone pretends to be your grandchild. They say they're in trouble, need money urgently. Maybe they say they've been arrested and need bail.
Yeah, it just plays on your emotions.
Totally. And there's this story from a few years back, 2021, about Marilyn Crawford in Ontario. It really shows how effective these scams can be.
What happened to her?
So she gets this call, someone claiming to be her grandson, Ian, saying he was in an accident and needed bail money, like $9,000.
Wow.
And what's so striking is that Marilyn, she even noticed that the voice sounded a little different, but she was still certain it was Ian. Looking back, it makes you wonder if they were already using, even back then, some kind of basic voice synthesis tech.
It's kind of terrifying to think about that even with that little bit of doubt, her emotional connection was so strong that she almost went through with it. And this is where I imagine AI voice cloning comes into play, making things even more dangerous.
Exactly. Because now, according to Peter Warmka, who's a former CIA officer and a real expert on fraud, all it takes for these scammers to clone a voice using AI is a tiny little voice sample, like 3 to 5 seconds.
3 to 5 seconds.
Yeah. Think about that. Where could they get that? From your social media, voicemails you've left, even just parts of conversations they've managed to record.
It's crazy how easy it is for them to get that kind of stuff.
It really is. So the AI, what it does is it analyzes the patterns in that tiny voice sample, things like the pitch, the tone, the rhythm, and then it learns to reproduce those patterns. So it can generate new speech that sounds incredibly close to the original.
That's a bit unsettling, to be honest, given how much audio we all put out there online without even thinking about it. And these scams, they're working, right? Like, they're actually making these criminals a lot of money.
Yeah, sadly they are. The Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre, they reported that Canadians lost almost $3 million to just the grandparent scam alone in 2024.
Wow.
That's not just a financial hit. That's a lot of emotional distress for the victims and their families. It's not just about the money. It's about the trust that gets broken within families, within communities. When these vulnerabilities are so easily exploited, it really makes you question, how do we even verify identity anymore?
It really does. And the threat is bigger than just voice, right? You mentioned deepfakes before. Can you explain those for us?
Yeah, so deepfakes take things a step further. It's not just audio, it's video too. So imagine, instead of just hearing a familiar voice, you actually see a video of someone you love seemingly in distress, even though the whole scene is totally fabricated.
Oh, wow.
And FinCEN, that's the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network in the U.S., they put out a warning last November specifically about these highly realistic deepfakes being used in these family emergency scams. So they're not just trying to trick your ears, they're trying to fool your eyes too.
That's a whole new level of scary. I mean, to see someone you trust apparently in danger, that's a whole different kind of manipulation. And what's really concerning is how accessible this technology has become for the wrong people.
Right. And our sources really highlight that. I mean, Keith Elliott, he's another expert in fraud. He said it's remarkably easy for scammers to clone voices using AI tools that are just readily available.
Remarkably easy.
Yeah. And Peter Wamka, he called AI a playground for scammers because it's so easy to get into and the potential payoff is huge. Then you have companies like Ziffa. They launched these open text-to-speech models. You only need 5 seconds of audio, and you can clone a voice.
It seems like the barrier to entry for doing these kinds of scams has just gotten so much lower.
It really has. And a big part of that is us, our online behavior. How much information we share without even thinking.
Right.
Keith Elliott, He made a great analogy. He said it's like leaving a filing cabinet with all your personal details out on your front lawn. You'd never do that, right? But that's kind of what we're doing with social media. We're giving these fraudsters so much information.
Yeah. Like all those old videos we post, the ones we've forgotten about, they could be used against us.
Exactly. It's kind of ironic, right? We're encouraged to connect and share online, but that's creating these vulnerabilities.
It makes you think twice about what you post. And the scale of this problem, it's pretty alarming, isn't it?
It really is. There was a report last October from Truecaller and Harris Poll. They found that over 50 million Americans in just the previous 12 months were victims of phone scams, with average losses around $452 per person.
That's a huge number of people. And a lot of money.
Yeah, and the experts are warning us about this.
What are they saying?
Adrianus Warmenhoven, he's from NordVPN, he talked about how these voice cloning tools, they're getting cheaper and more effective. So it's easier for scammers to use them to extort money by faking emergencies. Like, this is not some small fringe thing anymore. It's a major threat that we all need to be aware of.
So we've talked about how individuals are being targeted. But our sources also show that organizations, especially those using AI in their contact centers, are facing new risks too.
Right, it's a whole other area's concern. Because as businesses adopt AI, to be more efficient, to improve customer experience, they're also, without meaning to, creating new ways for these scammers to exploit them.
So what are some of the threats they're facing?
Well, one of the biggest ones is AI voice phishing.
AI voice phishing. Okay, and how does that work exactly?
So think about those voice biometric authentication systems. Where you use your voice as a password to verify your identity when you call your bank or something?
Right.
Well, the problem is these AI cloned voices, they can get past those security measures.
Really? They're that good?
Yeah, they are. There was even a BBC journalist who proved this. He used voice cloning technology to get into accounts at 2 UK banks that were using Voice ID.
Oh, wow.
It really exposed the weaknesses in these systems that we thought were so secure, and it's probably why OpenAI, the AI company, they decided to hold back on releasing their own voice cloning solution.
Really?
Yeah, and they even advise businesses to stop using voice-based authentication altogether because of these security risks.
That's a pretty big statement coming from a company like that.
It is, and if you look at the data, it backs it up. Santosh Kumar from Cisco, he reported a 3,000% increase in AI-driven voice phishing attempts compared to just 2 years ago.
3,000%.
Yeah, so this is clearly a growing problem for businesses, and it's not limited to any one industry. From what we've seen, it seems to be a concern across various sectors that use voice-based authentication.
So, besides using voice cloning to gain access, are there other AI-related security risks that contact centers are dealing with?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There are a few key privacy risks too. One is called membership inference attacks. It's a bit complicated. Basically, these attacks try to figure out if a specific person's data was used to train an AI model. And if they're successful, it could reveal personal information about people who might not even be customers.
Right, and that's a big problem.
It is. There's also the risk that attackers could understand enough about how a model was trained to mess with it, or even create their own fake version.
Like trying to get inside the AI itself. And what about chatbots? Those are being used more and more for customer service. Are they vulnerable too?
Yeah, chatbots have their own set of vulnerabilities. Prompt injection is a big one. So imagine a chatbot. It's got these rules it follows.
Right.
A prompt injection attack is like giving it a hidden instruction within a normal request.
Sneaky.
Yeah, and that can trick the chatbot into doing things it shouldn't, like giving away confidential information or bypassing security protocols. A security researcher, Johan Reiberger, he actually showed how you could do this. He messed with Google Gemini's memory, proving how these AI systems can be exploited.
So it's not just about using the AI as a tool, the AI itself can be the target.
Exactly. And there's more. There's model poisoning. This is a big worry, especially when it comes to insider threat.
How does that work?
So someone with bad intentions, they inject bad data into the AI model during the training phase, and that creates these hidden backdoors or weaknesses that can be exploited later on.
Kind of like planting a time bomb.
Yeah, exactly. And then you have API weaknesses. Contact centers depend on APIs to connect all their systems. But these APIs, they can be vulnerable to cyber attacks, like injection flaws or attacks that overload them and cause disruptions. And lastly, there's the supply chain. If a contact center uses third-party AI solutions, and those solutions don't have good security, it can create a whole new set of risks.
So for our listeners, what can they do to protect themselves from these AI-powered scams?
It's a great question. And luckily, there are some practical steps you can take. The FBI has been pretty clear about this. They say, hang up now and create a secret code with your family.
That's smart. So if someone calls claiming to be a relative in trouble, you have that code word to verify their identity.
Exactly. Peter Warmka, he also suggested having a code word or phrase with your family and friends. It's like an extra layer of security.
Makes sense. What else can people do?
Well, be skeptical. Whenever you get an unexpected request for money, especially if they want you to act right away and not tell anyone, always verify the situation yourself. If someone says they're your grandchild, hang up and call them back on their number or call another family member to check.
Great advice. And what about social media? We talked about how scammers are getting audio and video from those platforms.
Yeah, so be careful about what you share online, especially audio and video. Even old posts you've forgotten about can be dangerous. The less of your voice is out there, the harder it is for scammers to use it against you.
So it's all about being aware of our digital footprint and being skeptical.
Exactly.
Well, this has been a fascinating look at AI-powered scams. It's clear that AI is changing things, making the threat much bigger for individuals and organizations.
It really is. The speed at which this technology is being used for bad purposes is alarming. We need to be vigilant and adapt our security practices constantly.
It makes you think, given how fast AI is advancing and how it's being used for malicious purposes, what does this mean for trust and communication in the future?
Yeah, it's a big question. We need to rethink how we verify identity and build trust in a world that's increasingly digital.
It's a lot to think about. Thanks so much for sharing your insights with us today.
My pleasure. It's important that people understand these threats.
And for those of you listening, if you want to learn more about this, check out your local law enforcement agencies and reputable cybersecurity organizations. They often have resources and warnings about these kinds of slams. And remember, in this age of rapid tech advancements, staying informed is key.